Thank you for having me today. I'm so honored to be here, especially with these other fine gentlemen who are thought leaders. So we're going to have a great conversation. And as far as the transformation has gone inside of my business, it's all been about getting in front of our clients with Zoom and using virtual meetings. I think that's true for a lot of people these days, but the way that I was running my business is that I was seeing all my clients face to face, and some of my clients live out of state. So I would travel sometimes to see them. So this has really cut down on hundreds of hours on travel time for me. And as far as the transformation goes, I really started implementing a retirement income planning software that takes someone after we receive all their information, and it shows them within about 15 or 20 minutes. We're going through a discussion, but it shows them when their money could run out. So from a technology standpoint, it's really powerful to show someone like what they're actually doing right now and the small adjustments that they may need to make in order to, retire as you desire, as we say in my business. So, from our new technology that we started implementing along with using Zoom, it's just saved hours of time. And my team implemented all of this. I had nothing to do with it because I could, barely use my computer some days. So, really utilizing the strengths of our teams, that's so important. It's been a big game changer for my business.
Also grateful to be here. I appreciate it. Mr. Bloom, phenomenal observations. I think Zoom has been pretty pervasive across industries. What I'm seeing, we started our transition in January, which, is very lucky, quite honestly. But what we're seeing is that the space that we're in, which is somewhere between financial conversations, education, and really wellness dialogues, has evolved into really two spaces. One, everything is online, and because every bit of content that could ever transition is now bombarding that space, there's a need for personalization more than we ever expected. Going online courses and content now is a very crowded field, so we're finding ways to be a little bit more personalized. It's through technology. So we're hosting workshops, but we've had to develop tools using technology that address a person, not just a blanket. And that's been a really interesting challenge. And in some ways, very fun. And in other ways, it can be a headache. But I think the emphasis is on the person over just the person on the other side of the screen as just an object, really getting into detail. The other thing that it's done is it's really forced our team to evolve in the way that we communicate. We're a really small shop that normally spends a lot of time together. And we've had to consider, one, do we communicate effectively via Slack or other tools? But then two, we've had to be a lot more vulnerable in dialogues because mental health changes and shifts have really cornered the way that we normally operate. So as an extrovert, all my outlets are gone. I've had to find different outlets for what I do, and I'm sitting in this exact chair way too often. So it's forced not only innovation on the outward front, but it's really forced us to innovate internally, not only using tech, but really evolving our communication as well.
Charlie, it's good to be here. So as to the issue of digital transformation, kind of in a very simple idea here, in that I think it was Mike Tyson who said that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And as a microscopic organism, 1/1000th the width of a human hair, a technology roadmap, we may have had that plan. It may have been 5 years out or 10 years out. What we've really seen in my business and in the businesses of clients that I work with is they've had to advance that roadmap. They had to kind of throw out the old roadmap because it wasn't getting them where they needed, and they needed to step in very actively. So clients of mine are now in the space of really e-commerce. So brands that were not readily able to transact business online are doing so. That includes clients in the building space, for example. You can buy a house right now online, do the full virtual tour, do the e-signing. You don't actually have to have any of the human elements of that. My clients in food service, they are able to do curbside pickup, mobile ordering, all of the things that may have been on a longer term roadmap. And they just turned them on really quickly because necessity is a mother of invention. And clearly, a lot of people had to reinvent themselves just to keep the lights on, Charlie, just to keep the lights on.
Good day to everyone. Thanks, Charlie. I have to say, Bill mentioned something in his remarks that I wanted to echo and really have impacted me. And that's that so much of what I do used to involve me being on site with clients, from the highly intensive work to, hey, it's time for a status check-in. Folks wanted you there. They wanted to see you there. And I was trying to figure out a way from a business model to start easing back so that when I'm live with a client, it's a big deal. Well, thank you, pandemic, right? So what has happened is now the clients are realizing, hey, we don't got to pay all the travel fees and the travel costs to get this guy in here. I save a ton of time. I mean, there are days I'm sitting around going, gosh, I've checked off everything I wanted to get accomplished today. What can I get my nose in? Why? Because I don't have windshield time. I'm not sitting at a train station, an airport, or whatever. And so I've been pleased at how quickly we as humans have jumped into embracing the fact that, yeah, it would be nice to be sitting right now and having coffee with all you guys and shaking hands and doing the things we used to do. And yet this broadcast is going to be every bit as successful and informative for today's listeners as if we were all in that same studio sitting around that coffee table. And so when I think about the impact of the technology, the real challenges come from the employee side and the whole concept of Zoom fatigue. And I'm sure you guys feel it too. I mean, days where I hop from meeting to meeting on this, I am more tired, even if I have a day that I would normally be in front of the computer. So there is something to that. And unlike Aaron, as a bit of an introvert, I still like to have my interactions with people. I mean, I'm not a hermit. I still miss the sitting down, shaking hands, having a cup of coffee, and having that human connection. And that's the biggest challenge that I'm hearing from my clients right now is how do we keep our workforce not just engaged, but how do we keep them living the work experience we want them to have? That is the real challenge in all this.
Aaron said something very profound, that the personalization of the technology that is ubiquitous right now, that we're all using it. If you can personalize things to make people feel like you're actually there for them as much as you are in person, like you just mentioned, missing the body language changes the conversation. So the personalization of communication through technology has been, I think, the biggest transformation in my industry. And the average year, about 25% of gyms go out of business. I would imagine this year it's going to be closer to 60, 65%, because, the pandemic was like Dr. Joe mentioned, it was the Mike Tyson right hook to the face. No one saw it coming. And if we saw it coming, we didn't see it lasting this long and having this profound of an impact on every aspect of our business. So the communication has had to adapt, especially from my end, where what we do is physical. What we do is high touch. What we do is very close and interpersonal. It's very easy to correct somebody in a gym situation by just touching, like, hey, no, your elbow needs to be like this. But now we all need to become master coaches. And I've always thought the mark of a master coach and a master communicator is being able to portray something with just your words and have somebody physically do what you are describing with no hitch. So the biggest transformation that I've seen has been in communication, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, despite the negative effects of the lockdown, whatever term we're using now, on the economy as a general, and especially on my industry.
I think for us, we're in the concert business, and a lot like Patrick in the gym business, there are no live shows, right? I think only 2 states right now have live shows. I think it's Atlanta or Georgia, and maybe like Tennessee or something like that. But it really just is shut down across the board. But what has been really fascinating in terms of digital transformation and innovation has been everybody has moved towards online concerts, what our firm actually calls digital touring. In the past, the way that you had built an artist was to actually go on the road. You would, go and tour 100, 150 cap rooms, do 15, 20 cities. And, it wasn't very profitable for these younger artists that needed to really grow their fan bases. Now you are in an environment where there is no physical touring. Everybody is switched to virtual. You're looking at, platforms like Twitch that are doing incredible amounts of, live stream content just across the board. And our clients are really tapping into that. And now we can tour virtually, set them up in a room and have them touch 20 to 30, 40, 100 different cities within a given calendar year without ever having to move. And the cost efficiency of that is absolutely incredible. For people who don't, work in the touring business, it's expensive to go on the road. It really is. When you talk about the insurance that you need to carry and the equipment that you need to have and all the different things that go into touring, it gets very expensive. So, from our perspective, we feel like digital touring is an avenue to really scale the global. I mean, obviously, people love in-person concerts, right? I think everybody, I'm sure, has been to a concert, even on, this panel here. And I'm sure that everybody, if they wanted to go see the Red Hot Chili Peppers, they'd rather go and see them in person than, maybe over, a screen. Right. But what I think it's going to start to do is you're going to start to see these concerts more from just physical concerts to every Madison Square Garden concert that ever happens now happens both physically in person. And then for a pay-per-view model, you can start to build out these, virtual concerts. And I think, look at Live Nation's, earnings. They have done incredible business for the last 10 years. Touring has absolutely, is a very healthy and incredible business. And, people want to go back to live shows. And I believe that people are going to go back, and we're just going to have more people, go to physical shows and then buy on top of that digital shows.
Perspective, just like Ed said, like I'm saving a lot of windshield time and a lot of time traveling. But from a technology standpoint, going back to the software that we're using, it really allows us to do a very personalized plan at this point where people could physically see the changes that are, potentially needed to be made. I think that goes along with planning, because in 2 years from now, we could have a different political outlook, different taxes. 4 years from now, we're going to have another election. It's going to happen every 4 years, but it goes back to using technology and utilizing its powers to help you plan better. And that's what we've been doing this year. As soon as the pandemic hit, we immediately changed from an in-person to a Zoom model. And that's not going to change for my business. Like, I don't foresee us going back to an in-person model. It's not because I'm worried about COVID or something like that. It's just from an efficiency standpoint, from a productivity standpoint. And let's face it, my clients, they're really comfortable being on the computer. So, but going back to your question, it helps from a planning standpoint, and that's what we're utilizing right now. And I really think things are only going to improve moving forward because of technology.
We've been very mission oriented since we started, and we had a conversation maybe 3 years ago, given that we're in this financial education space, right? We come into businesses and we help people understand their money so they can show up more effectively to work. There's a lot of data there that I'll skip over, but we had this question, do we do better in a recession than we do out of one? And it caused us to really think about, how do we show up? What problem do we solve? And how do we get hyper specific on that? And through March and April, it was actually very terrifying, because we didn't feel like we were capable, given the technology suite that we had, to show up where we were needed most. And when you think about someone being financially stressed, the general consensus is that they paralyze. And as a mission-oriented company, an impact-oriented company, we really struggled to mobilize fast enough to really solve the problem. And the last 6 months have been really intensive efforts. My team has been just incredible through this, in dealing with me trying to move at the speed of light and simultaneously not burn the bridges while we move. But this has forced us to think about not what is the technology, but how do we use the technology differently to get an end result that's helpful for another person on the other side of a screen. And we are consistently challenged by that question. And I don't think we're quite done solving that puzzle. And whether it be gym closures or music venues shutting down, or the way that we communicate about money in business as leaders, I still think there's a lot to discover in the intersection of purpose and technology. You know, call it conscious capitalism, call it what you want. There is still a lot of room for growth and change here. Love living in the clouds. I spend a lot of time dreaming, and I really appreciate that. But I also like to come to ground level and figure out, you know, how do we bridge the gap between what is available and what people have access to. So a great example, the average person doesn't need some of the technology that we as CEOs may need. But if we're going to communicate effectively, I have to be able to transition from the clouds back to the ground. And our goal right now is to find the tech that's already in play and use it while maintaining a little bit of foresight into what's coming. And we have our own ideas, but there's still a lot of uncertainty, and it's hard to plan super far ahead right now. I imagine all 4, 5, 6, however many of us are here are probably feeling that. You can't project the same way. And despite all that, the future has never been certain. So as a kid, I used to use cups and wood as like bridges. So, you know, that's just kind of a history. But I think in a lot of ways, we're trying to take technology that acts as a base and then use another piece of technology on top of it to build a stronger foundation to grow.
First and foremost, I believe that your purpose should have stayed the same throughout COVID-19. As you know, Charlie, I did a book this year with 140 CEOs and presidents of companies from Target, Verizon, you name it. I mean, Starbucks, Mercedes-Benz, Marriott. And talking with all those CEOs and having the conversation, most of them would tell you that their purpose did not change. If anything, the tools changed, and technology is a tool, and it had to be in play differently. And as your conversation about personalization, I think technology can personalize content, can understand big data and analyze preferences and be able to push content in that way. So you definitely need to do that. You need to make it easier through your technologies, but you really, you know, you need to have that human powered, technology aided sort of solution set. So if you take Brian Cornell, who's in the book, the CEO of Target, they did not change their purpose, which is to help all families discover the joy of everyday life. But they advanced the amount to which people could do same day pickups at a speed that was meteoric. Because in order for families to discover the joy of everyday life, when everyday life had changed so dramatically, they needed to be able to do that. And the same would be true for the purpose behind a Starbucks, which is to inspire and nurture human spirit, a person, a cup in a neighborhood at a time. How do you do that when you can't have people sitting in your dining rooms? That's a different challenge, but the purpose doesn't change. The execution against the purpose with the tools available does. From my worldview, I'll use a Starbucks example. You know, clearly a problem was having to wait in line to pay with cash for the longest time. It was a bottleneck in the rapid fire Starbucks experience. So what did they do? Before the technology was really adopted, they were using 2D technology with a barcode on a phone, and they were able to get mobile pay and kind of the beginning of mobile pay. And then we went to mobile ordering. And then if you think about even before the pandemic, they were coming to this place, which is I think where the world will be, where they were only going to have stores where I could come in and pick up the drink that I mobile ordered. So there was no place to sit. And this was being tested in New York before the pandemic. So what are we trying to get at here? We're trying to use the technology to take away the pain points, make it as easy and convenient as possible. But we retained the barista handing off the coffee cup to the customer in that environment instead of having a robot that executed the fulfillment of the completion of the technology only cycle. You know, about 50% of our population now is younger than 30, and it's going to increase in the youthfulness of it. Most of those people are digital natives, Charlie. They need a lot of technology surrounding them to get the transactions done, but all of us are craving real humans to fulfill and lay on top of that technology.
The thing that comes to mind, technology I had been starting to use, I guess around 2018 or so, that I'm sure you're all familiar with, is Loom. You know, you can create a nice little recording. They can see you can narrate, someone can see your screen. And that was quite helpful in this idea of not having to run to a client to clarify something or whatever. Questions could get answered and they could be quite clear. However, what I found here during the pandemic, to Clayton's point, of course, the only thing that in addition to no live concerts, there's no conferences. There's no live conferences. And public speaking is not only a revenue item for me, it's also the second most common way that I get business after referrals from satisfied customers. And so, obviously the conference industry went kaput in all of this. And I thought, okay, well, how do I replace that income stream? And how do I use this time that I'm maybe not otherwise doing live events to still build relationships with people in the event space? And I came across a technology called Soapbox, not unlike Zoom, or excuse me, like Loom, except it adds a visual component. And the beauty of it is in its ease of use. And so now when I do my outreach, whether it's to a prospective client or to a meeting planner, I can send them a video that's embedded right in the email. They don't have to click a link. No one has to get weird about, oh, where is this link going to take me? My smiling face is right there. I'll put a couple of sentences in the email to wet their whistle. And then it's a 30-second video and they get a taste of who's Ed Krow. Not only why should I listen to this, but do I want to pick up the phone and give this guy a ring? And so I've taken something that probably wasn't initially designed as a marketing tool. I think it was more a communication tool for in-house teams. And I'm using it to market, and it's starting to pay dividends. I've had meeting planners call and say, Ed, no one has ever outreached to me in a video. And in 30 seconds, I could see your face. I got a sense for your personality. Made me want to pick up the phone and schedule an appointment with you. So like Aaron, I'm not the most probably well, I shouldn't say like Aaron. He's probably more tech savvy than I am. I'm not looking to reinvent a technology. I'm not that tech savvy. But show me something that might solve a problem, and I'm willing to adapt it to fit my particular need.
What Dr. Joe said, I don't think that you should have altered the purpose of your business at all. I think maybe the destination changes. Just look at the reported statistics from the past year. Over the first 2 months of the lockdown, March and April, the calls to the National Mental Health centers, the various ones across the state, were increased by about 900%. They think opiate overdoses went up about 120%. So that's telling us that during this time, people were obviously lacking something. People were lacking structure in their lives. This lack of human connection was having a very negative effect on society as a whole. And luckily, I view fitness as a solution industry. We provide solutions for people, even if it's something as simple as having a little bit of structure in their day, something that is in their calendar that they know will be able to overcome that obstacle so they can rebuild that confidence that they might feel is gone as they're stuck in their apartment. And for us to do that, it did not really require much innovation at all. Honestly, in my industry, there are two things. The people who keep it simple tend to win, and the people who are smart with their money tend to win. Because we need to be here for all of our clients. We need to be there for, we branched out to the city as a whole to kind of provide that solution. We offered a decent amount of free things for people just to be that little, foot in the dam of change that was coming. So of the negative change, I should say, that was coming. So we tried to reach out to as many people and help as many people as possible. If we tried to do something incredibly innovative, that would mean that we would have to have waited instead of being ready to go from day one. The moment that we got notification that we had to be shut down, that my city, Jacksonville, was basically ceasing operation, we were ready to go. We launched within 2 hours because we saw it coming, and it did not require much different technology than what we already had at our fingertips, because all we needed to provide for people was a solution to the weirdness of the time. And that can be something as simple as a, hey, from day begins. And I know that it might not seem like the best idea, but I feel better afterwards and my mood is altered for the rest of the day. And then we need to provide accountability for people like, hey, you told me that you like this class. Where were you on Wednesday? And these are two things that can be done with Zoom, with email, for years and years and years, and with text messages. So we just tried to utilize the simplest technology with the most massively available technology to make things simple for people so we could actively provide a solution for the weirdness of the time.
When you think about, I guess, just technology and just, again, like where we sit, I really do think that our move into this virtual concert space really has given people the sense of entertainment that they really need, particularly when you talk about the ethics of technology and like the use of it, particularly in entertainment, I really am excited to see how much amazing content has been coming out from the virtual touring space. I mean, just even today, I saw SB Projects and Scooter Braun announce that they're doing another virtual concert with Ariana Grande, and you've got amazing shows just coming honestly across the board. And this is the time where we're really, I feel like, providing amazing in-house and in-home entertainment. And I think that is providing a lot of value to society right now that is really kind of looking for some level of escape.
I mean, and technology is something that we need to embrace regardless. Moving forward, I think we all know that it's going to be a part of our lives, whether we like that or not. And going back to your question, Charlie, about, to train people because of it, ultimately, I think it comes down to that employee's mindset and the employer's ability to make it simple for the employee. So as a business owner, if you're able to make the process simple for your team members, I think that would be a huge help for your employees to embrace technology, especially if they've never really used it before or they're not really sophisticated with it. So if you have someone in the workforce who may be in their later years in the workforce, they may not want to embrace technology. So maybe you could either retrain them to another field or another part of the company. There's a lot of moving parts with that, but it definitely comes down to your mindset as a business owner and the employee. And, the second part of your question, as a business owner, we need to really figure out, should we be creating technology to keep up with, the Starbucks of the world or these big companies of the world? Or do we really need to embrace the ones that already exist and create like a technology team on your staff to figure out which are the right pieces for you? Because we're all different. All of our businesses are different. But I think we could all agree on that Zoom is a wonderful thing, or Microsoft Teams is a wonderful thing, or these different streaming platforms. It's pretty amazing because they're easy to use. Technology is simple, easy to use, whether that's training an employee, retraining an organization. It can happen, and it's going to have to, but you have to have the mindset for change and be willing to embrace that. That's how I think businesses will get ahead.
Okay. I think there's light and dark in everything. And in some way, when you stretch a system or it becomes divisive and starts to experience a lot of tension, that snapping effect can be really good. The education system is going through this right now. And I do think there are some really strong cultural challenges that we're going to experience as far as access goes. But that's only one side of that coin. There's also a tremendous opportunity for people to access jobs that they might never have had an opportunity to get simply because you can do it remotely now. So while these things start to collapse in on each other and it becomes harder to differentiate, is this good, is it bad, because we look at both sets of data, I try to look at where's the positive and separate it as far as possible from where's the cost, and try to see those as different mechanisms for change. Because there's a tremendous amount of change happening either way in both sides. And from a financial side, this is our work. So I will not belabor that point, but the concept that finance and personal finance are grossly problematic for the average American is very, very pressing. However, this is a great time to look at that as an opportunity to present education on this front, to present solutions in the workforce on this front, to present wellness as a concept that is now like on the nose of dialogue in corporate culture rather than at the back of it. So there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. And I think that we should all be prepared as business owners to take on a little bit more awareness of what's happening with our people in regards to the cost of technology, rather than just barreling forward and expecting it's all going to go perfect.
Gave their best shot in the 19th century to stop the textile manufacturing machines from operating. It didn't work. Right now in our society, I'm extremely excited by what technology is offering in terms of the democratization of opportunity, moving to the cloud. Many companies that I worked with had an advantage when they could compute before the cloud. Other people didn't have that computing power. Now we're all able to get software as a service and be able to access great computing power So for me, I don't think the have not issue is that you're not going to be the first to the party. But if you're a smaller business owner, you better watch what Starbucks is doing. You better kind of figure out your strategy for digital pay, whether that's a Square device on top of your iPhone or whatever it might be. Certainly, you do not need to be the first in, but you need to be a fast follower of trends of consumers. What consumers want, what becomes a service standard, we need to be able to apply. And fighting that off and acting like we can put our head in the sand is not going to make it go away. It's going to make us go away.
Okay.
To tag on to what Joe said there, so much of it is about allowing not only our company's purpose, mission, vision, whatever you want to call it, to dictate where we're going, but where is our customer base going and what do they expect with regard to their interactions with our company. I just read a stat that people are 68% more likely to leave your brand after one bad digital interaction with you. That sounded awful high to me. And again, it's only one study, right? But I said, whoa. And so I think about it being in the talent management world, I see that for our people. You know, if we can't deliver a technology package that our people are comfortable with, that make their jobs easier, how many bad experiences are they going to live through before they go somewhere else? I do not believe that technology is going to drive jobs out. In fact, we've seen the exact opposite. I recall a good business friend of mine wrote a book 20 years ago called The Perfect Labor Storm. And in it, he talked about how technology was going to drive the need for less jobs, but then you had the retiring of the boomers and all these things were coming together. And we didn't see all of that come to fruition. There were a lot of societal issues because of that. But what we're finding is that, yeah, technology is replacing some jobs, but it's creating others. So it becomes that upskilling that I believe Bill mentioned, that it's about how do we retrain our people to harness that technology. And that could unfortunately mean that there are going to be people who are with us today that if they're not willing to change, they're not going to be with our companies tomorrow. And that's a sad reality, but that's a personal choice that those employees are making if they don't want to get on the technology bandwagon. Because we have to not only keep up with our competitors, but again, to Joe's point, where are our customers going and why are they going there? Can we beat them there? That's the real question. That's what's going to set us apart. And for the little guy, big boys, to see where they're going and how can they jump on some coattails with regards to the technology, find a cheaper, better, maybe less bells and whistles way to deliver on the same promises to keep their customers.
Technology has had a different effect on my industry than everybody else during this pandemic. Obviously, the Zoom, the video conferencing, the training apps are things that people are getting used to, but we also have the influx of biomonitors. We have the Whoop strap, we have the heart rate monitors, we have things like that that are now being purchased or invested in by large companies. So people are starting to view it as a necessity to get in shape. It's almost like the yoga pants 20 years ago. It's something that people feel like they need to buy if they want to be a gym person. And this data is good for someone who can interpret it. This data is good. It's from an employee standpoint, from an employer standpoint, I'm very 50-50 on how popular and available these pieces of technology are. It's good to have employees who can understand actually measuring a heart rate, not just, what you see like the color-coded schemes on a treadmill, but can actually interpret the numbers to get someone the desired effect. But as a trainer, as a coach, as someone who's in the trenches, I don't think this is the best option for most people because they're outsourcing their kinesthetic awareness to a piece of technology. They're now reliant on a piece of tech to say, hey, did I sleep well last night? Well, it says I got 70%. I must have slept well. It's okay. But can we focus on how that actually makes you feel? Can we focus on your awareness of it so that you can become aware of your biomarkers instead of just relying on a piece of technology for it? So I'm 50-50 on the technology. I think that it's good. I think that in long term, it's a good thing. I just think that as far as humans being very out of touch with their body, and we can see this in the climbing percentage of Americans who are obese every year. We just don't have a very good relationship with ourselves physically. And outsourcing that relationship, I don't think is a long-term good thing.
Hey,
Thank you, everyone.
great to meet all of you.
Great start. It's nice to meet you again.
Okay, thank you.